Over 200 hours were used to bring you our first look at the Flashforge Adventurer 4. There you are. Welcome back. This is the Flashforge Adventurer 4, a big brother or big sister to the Adventurer 3. And at $7.99, it's a compelling price. And Flashforge asked me to take a look at it and kind of tell you what I think about it. I wrote down stuff. Or no, I did. This isn't writing it down. This isn't writing down. I typed down stuff so I wouldn't forget. So for the Adventurer 4 at $7.99 US, it's $220 on the X, $220 on the Y, and $250 on the Z or Z. It's got a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, defaults with a 240-degree limit, and then they also give you a 0.4 millimeter nozzle that will go to 265. These nozzles are easily releasable. In fact, they call them easily removable and quick release. So that's kind of interesting there. They have a camera for time lapse. It didn't perform as well as I had hoped. Wireless printing is available via Flash Print 5, which I found to be an excellent update to the slicer. It's got assisted bed leveling with baby stepping. It's got a HEPA filter in there to filter any of the noxious stuff you may print. Filament detection, resume for power outage, and a website you can go to learn everything else you need to know. For a first look, we can talk about stats, but really it comes down to how the heck does it print? And boy, have I got a story for you. First, I did something that came included on the machine. Wow. It's a part. I name it Sir Widget. It's using their red PLA, nothing fancy. Default print, came with it. It should look good, and it looks good. Like it looks good. Looks good. I started up some prints that were some of my test prints. Like I did a chess pawn that I believe Chuck designed, maybe Chuck Hellebuck. And I think it looks great. It's their filament, it's their PLA, sliced in flash print. Good job. I also did a Chep Cube. Wait, Chep Cube, there it is. Again, in their filament, it's red PLA, looks good. I've got my calipers here. Let's take a look. X is 19.98. Y is 20.15, Z or Z is 19.83. So it does need a little bit of adjustment on a few of the axes, but nothing horrific, and I call this a pass. So my buddy Alan, you know him as Mandic Really until the clock app shut him down, and then he became the HotRodHippie. He makes these can cups, and this one is a 10mm socket. I printed this in red PLA from Flashforge, and it was using flash print. I think it did a really good job with any of these. We got to give it the old
blizzard test.
So the can cup is an interesting display of a few different printing mechanisms that you want to succeed. So it's got detail, it has quick movements, it does have bridging. It has to travel between 2 points that it's printing. It has to be able to fit the can, and it has to be at proper clearance or tolerance in order for the can not to fall out, which we've proven. So,
great success.
For a first look, we can't really just print with the included filament. That would prove nothing. So, I did print with some Polymaker Polyterra PLA. I actually had the spool right next to the machine, and I printed this benchy, and I think it did okay. That looks like a darn decent benchy. Okay, great. Good job, benchy. I had the filament loaded in the machine, and I thought, well, why don't we do the Mandic Really HotRodHippie can cup again? And I think it looks really good. One of the things that flash print does is it puts a seam right there, and it seems to be something you can configure, but I didn't take the time to configure that because the rest of the koozie looked great, but we do need to give it
blizzard test.
I feel silly doing that. Like I should go to Dairy Queen and get some ice cream. Next I thought, well, I should try other filaments, and so I thought I would try some Jesse PLA from Dave over at Printed Solid. Unfortunately, those didn't perform well. I had some issues where the machine itself would start clicking like it was unable to drive the filament. So the typical PLA profile, I want to make sure I got this right, 0.2mm layers, 2 perimeters, 10% infill. I chose 3D infill. 60mm per second, 210C on the nozzle, 45C on the bed. Sometimes I would jump it up to 60C, but bed adhesion never seemed to be an issue. The issue was with printing. I thought, okay, now we're on a quest because their filament worked and a third-party filament from Polymaker worked, I think what we need to do is test more third-party filaments. I tested 14 different filaments for this machine. Fourteen different filaments, and oh boy, we get to look at them all. And what's kind of fun, I used the same G code, Yahtzee, that these were printed with. And so that was my basis for whether or not I needed to adjust things further. And in fact, the ones that failed used the same G code as well. This is Repcord's 3D Pink Mafia. This was printed with the same settings as the other ones, so 215C on the nozzle, between 45 and 60C on the bed. Bed adhesion wasn't an issue. 0.2mm layers, 3D infill. I mean, it looks good. What you have to look for is right along here, whether or not the bridging worked, and it did. You have to look whether or not there are layer inconsistencies along here, which there are some, but they're not as visible. It's got that seam. Look at that. It's got that seam, but we got to do the test.
Blizzard test.
Looks like 3D Pink Mafia is a filament that works. Next up, GST3D PLA. You can see some of the inconsistencies on the small pillar here. Bridging was, well, it's pretty good. It's got a few little things that hung out. I consider this to be a good model. I think GST3D is a PLA filament third party that works with the machine. This is Polyalchemy's elixir called Gold Rush, and this is a PLA. Bridging was a little suspect just because you can see these things sort of swaying in the wind. The details on the 10 and the ribbing at the bottom look great. This is Blood of My Enemies by Amy Double D and Protopasta. It's a wondrous filament, and it had no problems printing at the specs that the G code was using. It is a little bit furry, but that's easily cleaned up with a lighter or heat or just time. So if you take a look at the 10, if you take a look at the ribbing at the bottom and the side walls, everything looks really, really good. This is Spidermaker PLA. Unfortunately, bridging wasn't good with this material and it appeared to layer shift. For some reason, multiple layer shifts occurred. This was the only one that did that, and I don't know why. The pattern at the bottom does contain a little bit of blobs. It wasn't printed as well. This is Fulament Matte Black PLA. The sidewalls are good. The number 10 is good. The bridging is fine, and I think it did a really decent job reproducing this column over here, having to travel back and forth between it. This is Halo 3D Filaments, and it's called Dark Matter, and it's Sean's favorite. It's also got an incredible sheen to it. The color is fantastic. I think the machine did a really good job in reproducing the sidewalls, the 10 seam. That's not bad.
Blizzard test.
Like the can. The can goes. This is Matter Hacker's Build Series PLA from 2016. I think it did a fine job. The filament wasn't stored quote unquote properly. It was just left out and moved between locations over the years. But the 10 is good. Sidewalls are good. A little bit of fuzziness to it. I think it's from the age. The detail at the bottom looks good. It worked. Like it legit worked. Hold the phone, wait a second. Look at that. There's a line right there. I didn't see it because it's not, here, look. It's not on my side. That line's not there. But that line's on that side. I don't know why. That's a big darn seam too. This is Filament One's Pla Pro Select. This is one of my favorite filaments that I use here in the studio. The 10 is good, the sidewalls are good, the details at the bottom look pretty decent. Bridging is a knife right across there, should take care of it, no problem. It's good. How's the seam? Ooh, look at that seam, that's nice. Ooh. This is Fulament Mystic Green right here. Looks like it has a little bit of filament hanging down that we could take care of with a knife across for the bridging. Sidewalls are decent. The 10 looks good. The pattern at the bottom looks good. There's a little bit of fuzz up here. You can kind of see some inconsistencies with the light, but I don't really feel it with the finger. So why is this one interesting? Well, originally, I had problems with the extruder clicking when I was printing with Fulament, and I thought, oh no, so the printed solid Jesse and the Fulament both were having issues, the same issues. And I was actually just talking with Dave over at Printed Solid at the time, and I let him in on this, and he said, oh, jump the temperature up, 220 and above. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, some hot ends, for some reason, just need it a little bit hotter. And I was like, okay, well, Fulament, Jesse Pla, what properties do you share? And he said, well, we both use NatureWorks Pla, but I think in other ones I've showed you, there is NatureWorks as well. So it is Fulament and Printed Solid, Jesse Pla, that had the issues, and now jumping the temperature to 235°C, I got this result. And I think it looks good. We still have to test it.
Blizzard test.
So that leaves us with one final test of PLA, and that's with the Printed Solid Jesse PLA. And with Fulament, we jumped the temperature to 235, and it worked, and it looked fantastic. Would the same be true for the Jesse PLA? Wow. You betcha. Have a look at that. This is my beloved 3DPN Vanilla Bean Ice Cream, and it's Jesse PLA from Printed Solid. Sidewalls look good, the 10 looks good, the detail at the bottom looks good. Top layers are glorious. This part right here has a little bit of inconsistencies, but it's not really, I can't really feel it. Seam is fantastic, but it might have to do with the opaqueness of the filament. There's a little bit, look at, there's a little chunk right there. Just a little chunk. I don't see it on this side though. But all we did on this one was jump the temperature to 235°C to see if it would print the same as Fulament, and it did. And does it pass the blizzard test? That's it with the PLAs. Those are all of the PLAs that we tested. And here's what I really like about that. When you have yourself a 3D printer, especially one like this, you're not going to just get filament from the manufacturer. You're going to get filament from other places, whether it's filament manufacturers or resellers. And so the goal was to test as many as possible. And I hope I gave you a good swath of PLAs tested. But what about PETG? Because the machine can print PETG. I had to like Tyrannosaurus arm, like get into there. I had Salt Bay into there. This is Greengate 3D's recycled PETG. And I swapped out the nozzle from the 240C nozzle to the 265C nozzle. And this was using default settings in FlashPrint 5 for PETG. The default settings for PETG in FlashPrint 5 are 255C on the nozzle, 80C on the bed, 0.2mm layers, 2 perimeters, and 15% hexagon infill. Also, it defaults with a raft, which I thought was interesting. Will it peel off? It's so rare that I print with a raft. I'm not used to this. So here it is, one last blizzard test. So at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that the Flashforge Adventurer 4 is a capable machine. It has a decent build volume. It has nozzles that let you print PLA, PETG, ABS, and everything in between. It's fully enclosed with the filter. It has assisted bed leveling, power loss detection, a filament detection system for when you run out of filament, a touchscreen up front, a removable flexible build plate. At the end of the day, for $7.99, I think it's an attractive offering. There's a link in the description. It'll take you to the website. You can learn more. But we gave you 200 hours of printing to kind of show you what this machine is capable of. If you have any questions about it, or if there's a specific thing you want to see printed on it, hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear. If you made it this far, you're awesome. Don't forget to hug each other more. Fight for a cause you believe in. And as always, high five.
A dude. Yeah, they're thick. The amazing DQ Blizzard.